Welcome to Sports Communications Topic 4, The Future, A Brave New World. This is Part 6 where we talk about law and ethics. The law, a particularly interesting thing to talk about. That's the formal rules which govern society that we decide generally collectively. There's sports law in particular, particularly around doping and drugs, so we'll go and have a look at a couple of those now. Firstly, we'll have a look at Sports New Zealand release from 2007 about anti-doping. So information about the press release about anti-doping rules. Go and have a look at that. The the codes established in New Zealand, I think, have all signed up for this, so it's always interesting to know what's happening. The other site is Drug Free Sport. They've got a whole load of facts there. This is Drug Free Sport New Zealand. There's usually a latest link at the top. You can check medication supplements. There's a whole load of facts on what is doping, why is doping prohibited, so on and so forth. So it's quite a useful little fact page for New Zealand in particular. So head off and have a look at that too, so you're familiar with that. Doping law in New Zealand was introduced in 2005. That's the Sports Anti-Doping Bill. We're trying to commit to having clean sport in New Zealand and wanting our athletes to compete in a drug-free environment. Equally then there's the Bosman ruling from the EU, which is a football ruling from 1995, decision concerning the freedom of movement for workers, freedom of association, and how that links with the European Community Treaty. That case was really important decision for the free movement of labour and had a really important effect on how football players transfer within the EU. It banned restrictions of foreign EU members where national leagues within the national leagues, and allowed professional football players within the EU to move freely to another club at the end of their term of contract with their present team. So that kind of ruling is quite important. Also contract law around licensing, sponsorship, advertising, all that kind of thing. Get familiar with that. And restrictions on sponsorship products and advertising. In New Zealand, you're not allowed to advertise tobacco or hard liquor. In many countries, you can't advertise liquor at all, and I suspect at some point in the future there will be no alcohol sponsorship in New Zealand as well. Then I can imagine that there will be some issues around things like McDonald's and that kind of fast food as sponsorship. So it will be interesting to see how the trends move in the next few years. So that's the law currently. So let's have a look at ethics. So thinking about what ethics are, we talk about honesty, but how on earth do we really define honesty? It's really difficult. One person's honesty is another person's narc, or another person's rudeness. We tell white lies in society all the time. Is that really being honest? Think of the kind of questions like, does my bum look big in this? Do what's right, but who determines what's right? That's a really difficult thing again to decide, and it's very much often based on a moral judgment, not a logical judgment. Respect others. Who does everybody deserve respect? That's something else we tend to do. And if everybody does deserve respect, then that must mean we have to question our own ethics. Do unto others as they would do unto you. What does it mean to act in an ethical manner? You've got to think about that. And equally, if being ethical is habitually living a good life, which is much broader than analysing what's right and wrong and more important than just moral conduct, what is the definition of living a good life? Again, your definition is going to vary from mine.